Okay, welcome back, everyone. As we learn our Thursday night marathon, getting ready for Yom Adin, and as we said, it's Rameir says in the beginning of Pirchei Avos, Kol Aloymei Torah Lishma Zoichel Advarim Harba. So we want to make sure that we're learning Torah Lishma to be Mekayim the Mitzvah D'Oraisa V'Dibar Tabam L'Asais Nachas Ruach L'Yotzreinu on this last Leil Friday, Thursday night / Friday of Shabbos of the year. Says the new Mishnah, HaMeicher Peres L'Chaveiroi. If Marshall sells fruit to Shalom. Now, we know that when you're selling produce comes from the ground. So there's going to be impurities. There's going to be some dross. Now, first of all, when you sell wheat, near the wheat is always some lentils that gets mixed in with the wheat seed. So there's going to be a certain percentage of lentils. So says the Mishnah, when Marshall sells grain to Shalom, he has to accept a quarter a kav of tinoifus, of impurity per sa. Now, we're going to see that the Gemara is going to discuss if that means earth and pebbles, or if it means lentils. Te'enim, if Marshall sells Shalom figs, mekabel of esem misula islameya. He has to accept 10 wormy figs per 100. That's standard. That's the norm. Martav shel yayin, if he sells him a wine cellar, he sells him kegs of wine. Mekabel of eser kaisisai islameya. He has to accept 10 barrels that are already starting to smell vinegary per 100. Kankanim b'sharayin. In Sharayin they manufacture clay. If he sells him jugs in Sharayin, Mekabel of Eser pizzais, he has to accept 10 inferior ones, Lameya per 100. So let's get back to the grain. If he sells him grain, he has to accept a roiva hakav of tinaifus per asa. So what is tinaifus? So tanarav katina roiva kitniyas l'sla. He has to accept, I said lentils, I meant legumes. He has to accept he has to accept a quarter of a kav of legumes that get mixed up per sa. That's what Rav Katina tells us. So the Gemara says, only legumes, va'afruris lai. He doesn't have to accept a certain percentage of earth and pebbles. Rabba Bachia Ketuvsa said, Mishmei de Rabba, Boirer tzrar migrainai shel chaveiroi. If Aaron comes and picks out pebbles from amongst the threshing floor of Marshall, he's not doing Marshall a favor. Because those pebbles, go on the scale with everything else. So nice and like to make eaten. He has to pay him for the price of wheat. Because those pebbles, Shalom will have to accept a certain percentage of the pebbles. So the Gemara answers, you're right. But kidneys, if it's legumes, roiva, Shalom has to accept a quarter of a kav. Afruris, if it's pebbles and dirt, pachis merayva. He only has to accept less than a quarter of a kav. Says the Gemara, Afruris roiva lai, and pebbles he doesn't have to accept a quarter of a kav. But Tanya, we learned in a brisa, Hamoicher Peiris l'chaveiroi, where Marshall sells produce to Shalom, chitin mikabel of roiva kitnius l'sa. Wheat, he has to accept a quarter of a cup of kitnius, of legumes per sa. Sa'orim, if he's selling barley, mikabel of roiva nishovis l'sa. He has to accept a quarter of a cup of straw per sa. Adoshim lentils, mikabel of roiva afruris l'sa. So you see that by lentils, you have to accept a quarter of a cup. That the Gemara assumes it's the same thing by wheat. My lav hu adin lechitin u'lasayrim. That by wheat and barley you also have to accept a quarter of a cup of earth and pebbles. So the Gemara says no, lentils is more. Why? Because lentils they don't cut with a sickle. Lentils they pull out from the ground. And since you pull out from the ground, more ground comes with it. Shani adoshim dime'aker akrelo. So the Gemara says, okay, but then we should say that we have here a proof. Elataima da adoshim dime'aker akrelo. Aval chitim desari loy. But wheat and barley, you don't have to accept it. So are we going to say that this is indeed a raya that you don't have to accept a quarter of a cup of earth by wheat and barley? Tivship minei chitei usarei dafruris loy mekabel. You don't have to accept that amount of earth. Says no, it's not a proof because lo'ilam chitei visarei mekable afruris. Maybe wheat and barley you also have to accept earth. The chiddush why it says it by adoshim is because we would think that since you pull it out from the ground, you might have to accept more than a raiva. Adoshim it's strichlei. The Sokadai Rabina Kaven the Makar Akrilu. Since you pull it out, I might think Yoisim Raiva Nami Lekabel. Shalom has to accept even more than a quarter of a kav Kamash Malan. Now here's an interesting thing. If Shalom knowing who he's dealing with, he knows he's dealing with Marshall. So Shalom sifts the flour. Shalom wasn't born yesterday. He's been around the block. So in Bol and Nafis, if he comes to sift it, and as he expected, he found more than a quarter of a calf. Right? Shalom tells his wife, just as I expected. Right? She said to him, what are you doing? What are you checking? So Shalom said, I know who I'm dealing with. So imbal and nafais menafes kulay. Once he sees it as more than the allowed impurity, he could give him back everything. Now, why is that? Imre ladina, some say it's alpidin, the imre la knasa. Some say it's a penalty for Marshall trying to cheat him. And the Gemara explains. Imre ladina, the fact of the matter is when Shalom pays, he wants only grain. But if it's less than a quarter of a kav, mandi yav zuzeh aperish shvire yav. One who gives money wants only grain. However, v'roiva leitorach inish. But if it's only a quarter of a kav of impurities, a person doesn't bother to sift it. Yoiser mirayva tarach. More than a quarter of a kav, he's tarach. So once he already had to be tarach, the cave in the tarach b'kulei. Once he already had to be tarach, because he sees that it seems to be more, so then he's going to go the whole thing. If he goes the whole thing, so then really Marshall has to give him the full amount. So now he demands the full amount. V'imre la knasa. It's a penalty. Why? Because normally the normal amount of legumes is a roiva. If there's more, then that's a sign that Marshall mixed it in. Roiva shchiach. Yoiser loy shchiach. More than a roiva is not shchiach. And that means that he mixed it in. He was cheating. The ihu da arev. Once he's cheating, so then we throw the book at him and we make him give a full amount. The cave in the arev, kansur rabbanim b'kulei. The rabbis constant him with everything. So now the Gemara attacks this. Why, it's really nice on a Thursday evening before Rosh Hashanah. Already we learned a blot and a half. I mean, what could we do better with our time than this? It's really... Also, you should know that the Torah also protects us from punishment. Even though it says tshuva, tefillah, tzedakah, ma'avir, and esrei, gzeira, and it doesn't say Torah, that's because Torah doesn't remove a decree, but it does protect from a decree. So that's why tshuva, tefillah, tzedakah is Rosh Tev, is a vit Talmud Torah. Tshuva, tefillah, tzedakah is a vit Talmud Torah. Talmud Torah doesn't remove the decree, but it defends and protects us from it. Also, as I told you many times, and it's worth repeating, we tell Hashem, we have to give a reason to Hashem why we want a good year. We tell Hashem, I want a good year because this is what I want to do. I want a good year to be able to learn untroubled. I want a good year that this is, Hashem says, if that's the case, the people that find that they have to work a lot, sometimes it's because Hashem says, I'm doing you a favor. You're not learning. You would be punished for bittul Torah. So I give you a reason to work, and I give you more expenses, so then you have to work. You're better pumping gas than being mevatel Torah. But if a person uses their time for bittul Torah, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, you think I want you pumping gas? I created the world for Torah. I don't want you pumping gas. I don't want you working so much. I want you Torah more. There was a scary Chassam Sofer, which is really scary. It says that a minority of the Sanhedrin separated from Mordechai. What was their time on Mordechai? Mordechai saved the world. So that portion of the Sanhedrin said, look, there were a lot of people that Hashem could have sent to save the world. He could have sent Zerubbabel. He could have sent Daniel. Hashem interrupted your learning because your learning wasn't chashuv enough. It's a real powerful Chassam Sofer. It's very complicated. It's not the time for it. What happened to you got to close the Gemara in order to do a mitzvah she'eina yochel asli de'acher. And the answer is you're right. But he didn't have to send Mordechai. He could have sent somebody else. And remember, this is only a minority view. It was only Shapirish Mimenu Mixed Sanhedrin. It's only a minority view. But it gives us an idea that if we're learning, Hashem doesn't want to bother us with work. I got a lot of people to do work. There's a billions of people that can do work. You're learning. Torah is the best dischayer.
Rabbi?
Yes.
I heard that he was demoted from being the Nasi of the Sanhedrin following the miracle of Purim because he unnecessarily endangered the Jewish people as a whole.
Yes. There's one opinion that way, because he didn't bow down to Haman. There are those that say, listen, you don't want to bow down to Haman? Don't go to the king's gate. Disappear. Don't inflame Haman against the Jewish people. And again, that's only a minority of the public, of the Sanhedrin, because the majority held that what Mordechai did caused Klal Yisrael to do tshuva. Gedola Asaris HaTabas, the removal of the ring to Haman, was more powerful than 48 Nevi'im and 7 prophetesses. And by the way, he wasn't demoted from the Nasi of Sanhedrin. He was demoted from 4th place to 5th place.
Okay.
He lost the cleanup position. No, Mordechai. Now, says the Gemara weiter, Meisvei, Kol sa sheyesh ba roiva mimin acher, any saw, this is talking about kloyim. Now here, what's happening is Dr. Block is about to plant his field. So, and he has, you're not allowed to plant a mixture of seed. Kol sa sheyesh ba roiva mimin acher, if it has a quarter of kav of another species, you might. So the Gemara says, Savrua, at this point, we thought, the roiva de kloyim, that a majority, a quarter of a kav of kloyim, is kiyoyse meroiva dehacha, is like more than a quarter of a kav of legumes mixed into the wheat. And it says all you have to do is minimize it and not remove it all. The ketani you might. So the Gemara says, Loi. Roiva de kloyim, a quarter of a kav of kloyim, is ki roiva de hachidami. Is like the roiva over here. Just like the roiva over here, you don't have to do anything. A roiva is accepted. So also a roiva of kloyim, you only have to be mamayit. So the Gemara says, but if a rova over here, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to, Marshall could sell a rova to Shalom. Iachi amayamayit. So the Gemara says, that's not a kasha. Kloyim is more serious than a regular business deal. Mishum nechumra de kloyim, you should minimize it. Iachi says the Gemara, Ema Seifa, as we turn to Daf Tzadik Dalin Amid Beis, Reb Yaisi Aimer Yavar, that if AB sees that there is another species mixed into the amount of a raiva, he has to get rid of the entire mixture. See, it's like more than a quarter of a kav of legumes. We don't cancel what would be allowed because of the extra. If it's the allowable margin, so we could understand mechumra, we should lessen it. But mechumra, we should cause him to have to remove it all. Amay yavar. So the Gemara says, you know why? Because once we were telling him he has to remove some, but keep in the rest, so he's aware that there's other seed there, and he plants it, it looks like he's deliberately planting kloyim. I know, time of the Rabbi Yossi, once he's aware that there's another seed there and he's still planting it, it looks like he's biadayim, expressly maintaining kloyim. Tashma. Now this is, let's get two characters over here. Okay, Marshall and Philippe. Right? Shnayim shifkidu eitzel echad. Marshall and Philippe deposit money by Yitz. Zeh money v'zeh masayim. One of them 100, one of them 200. Now, Yitz got the money together. He doesn't know who gave the 100, who gave the 200. He knows one of them gave 100, one of them gave 200. Now, when it comes time for collection, what do you think? Marshall says the 200 is mine. And Philippe says the 200 is mine. What do you think Philippe had to run to Eretz Yisrael? You know, says the Gemara. What is Yitz do? Well, to each of them, they're definitely entitled to 100. Noisin lezemana v'lezemana. He gives Marshall 100 and Philippe 100, and the remaining 100 b'ashar yemunach hachiyavei Eliyahu. So what do we see over here? We see that we don't penalize the crook. We don't penalize the crook, and we give them both back 100. So the Gemara says, well, how could you make a comparison? Hachi hashta. Over there, it's certain that each one of them is entitled to 100. Hachi hashta. Hosam vaday mana lamar umana lamar. Here, each one is certainly entitled to 100. That's why it says you give each one 100. Rav Huna, who penalizes Marshall the full amount, that's because there's a big chance that Marshall mixed it in on purpose. If there's more than the allowed imperfections, it's very likely that Marshall mixed it in. You know, Marshall, you know. Toshma, Seifa. So then says the Gemara, let's look at the Seifa. Rabbi Yaisi, Im Kain. If Yitz returns 100 to Marshall and 100 to Philippe, then the crook is getting off scot-free. What's going to stop Marshall from doing this again? He didn't get punished. Really, it was Philippe that gave the 200. Marshall said he got the 200. He gave it a try. But if we're going to give him back the 100, what deterrent do we have to people like Marshall from doing these things? And that's what the Gemara says. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yaisi, Im Kain ma hifzid aramai. What did the trickster lose? Rather, Ella, poor Philippe, Hakol yemunach hachiyavei Eliyahu. Yet shouldn't give back anything. That way, the deceiver will learn that you can't do this. So the Gemara says, we see over here that there is a penalty, right? Says the Gemara, Hachi hashta. Over there, there's certainly a crook. Since one of them only gave 100, and they're both claiming 200, there's certainly a crook. In our case, it's not certain that Marshall is a crook. Maybe there was more imperfections in this batch. Says the Gemara, Hosam vada yikaramai. Who says he mixed it in? Maybe he didn't mix it in. Maybe this batch had more impurities. Tajma, a new case. Shtor sheyesh by ribis. Now this is an ugly side of Marshall. Marshall gave Aaron a loan, and he charged him interest, 19%.
Better than Visa and MasterCard.
You were feeling a little merciful. Shtar sheyesh by ribis, he charged Aaron 19%. Kain sinaisai, we penalize Marshall. The aina gaiva loyes karen v'loyes ribis. We don't even allow him to collect the principal of the loan. Divrei Meir. That's Yipani Meir. So you see that we penalize even that which is not the extra. Zeraya to Rav Huna says, well, yeah, over there, Hachiyash the Hosam, Mishas Ksivahu the Ovid Leishuma. From the time that he gave the loan, he put this ribbis on Aaron. Here, however, we don't know if Marshall mixed in the stuff. We don't know. Maybe it was just extra impurities. Taj Mama Seifa, the Chachamim say no. Marshall could collect the loan itself, he just can't collect the 19%. Goyves a Karen Veina Goyves a Ribbis. So you see, that's a raya that we don't penalize the regular stuff, which is a kasha on Rav Huna. Says the Gemara, again over there, Haki Ashka, Hosam Vadai Karna de Teru. The $10,000 loan that he gave to Aaron, that was heter. It's only the 19% that was Issa. Here, maybe he mixed in everything, and it was all illegal. Who says that he didn't mix in everything? Okay. We'll stop over here, Rabbi Isaac, because the next Gemara continues on. So Motzi Shabbos, I don't even know what time the daf is. Could you see?
Yeah.
Here comes Rich. He pulls out his handy computer.
It says that the daf is
Let's do a third tonight.
p.m.
Okay, the daf yomi on Motzi Shabbos. Huh?
Well, it said produced it tonight, but it said 94.95, according to your sheet.
The daf yomi Motzi Shabbos is at 9 p.m. And getting earlier, Rabbi say 9 p.m. You won't know what to do with the rest of Motzi Shabbos. Now, Rabbi say we did the Mishnah Yomis already, because now we're doing the segment for the Shabbos table. For the Shabbos table. I'm doing it over Shabbos, yeah. The segment for the Shabbos table, and we'll just set up the cameras.